May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Dwite Brown. Dwite came into the vicinity of Sokoji, where the San Francisco Zen Center was, back in the early 60s, maybe 63, 64, around there. And, he practiced there, and he didn't really become a Buddhist, in his mind, but he enjoyed the meditation. And he enjoyed reading about Zen, and he started sending his brother, Ed Brown, koans, Zen stories that he'd found maybe from Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. And so Ed and his buddy, Alan Witter, headed out to San Francisco and got an apartment near Sokoji, near Dwite, and eventually ended up sitting there too. Dwite came to Tassajara for the first practice period. He wasn't planning on staying for the practice period. My strongest memory of him is being there at Tassajara. But anyway, he went on to become an Episcopalian minister. And then later, around 89, I think, he and his wife, Judy, who he met on a Zen Center picnic back in May of 67, right before he came to Tassajara for the first time. So they both became Catholics then. Right now, they're living up in Northern California, I'd say, and they're involved with the Abbey of New Clairvaux, or the Abbey of Our Lady of New Clairvaux, the official name. And going to read to you now. The Abbey of New Clairvaux is a rural Trappist monastery located in Northern California in the small town of Vina in Tehama County. The farmland, once owned by Leland's Stanford, grows prunes, walnuts, and grapes, and the monks harvest from the orchards and vineyards to sustain the community. So Dwight and Judy are involved with the Abbey of New Clairvaux, and I can't remember if she does this. I know she's involved, but he's a tour guide there. Maybe she is too. You'll hear in the podcast. Dwight says, he wasn't really career-oriented, but he said he eventually got a master's degree in computer science and taught in a California community college for 20 years. And he's got a pension from that. And he was an Episcopal priest for a while, and he's had other employment. I'm just adding that now because that's from emails And we don't go into that much. He mentioned something about teaching computer science. You'll hear about Dwight's spiritual path in the upcoming podcast, which will begin as soon as we've given him a call, which will happen just as soon as we've had our pause to meditate. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause, and we'll be there to hit the bell to end the meditation. We'll give Dwight Clark a call.
This is Dwight.
Good morning, Dwight. How are you?
I'm well. You are right on time. That's amazing. And I am walking to my room. And, okay, I'm in here. And I will sit down and I'm going to plug the phone into computer so the battery doesn't run down. And can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah, fine.
Oh, good. Because I have it on speakerphone, so I don't have to keep holding it up.
Yeah, I don't know why, but you would think if it was on speakerphone, there would be like echoey or something, but it sounds really good.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I don't have much trouble with people's voices. I don't even suggest how they listen and talk. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Edward said he was glad I was talking with you.
Oh.
I'm not used to podcasts. I taught an online class where I sat in front of my computer and talked to about 15 high school students. But this is my first podcast in my whole life.
What was your class about?
Oh, it was 12th grade theology for Colby Academy Online. We read St. Francis de Sales, a couple of Frenchmen whose names I may not be able to remember.
Uh-huh.
And we read some papal encyclicals.
Wow.
I hadn't done anything in theology since I got my degree in 1972.
Goodness.
But my career later was teaching computer programming. So I was a little uneasy, and fortunately, St. Francis de Sales, right at the beginning of his book, says the best way to learn something is to teach it. So I thought, oh, good.
That's very interesting. You know, there's that's something that I have heard and seen in modern educational technique. If you have a student that's having a big problem with certain types of math or something, get them to teach the class.
Wow.
Even that extreme.
Wow.
Huh. Yeah, that's very interesting. And it's interesting because a lot of people hold themselves back feeling they're not qualified.
Right.
So that's a good thing to remember. Thanks for mentioning that.
I was just going to say I taught computer science at Chico State from 1982 to 84. And usually I was teaching classes where I had taken the class. So I knew exactly what needed to be explained. But one semester, the school started, and I didn't have any class. And I went to the department chairman, and I said, "You haven't given me any class." And he said, "Oh, Dwight," he said, most people, I give them the course I know they can teach, but you can teach anything. And so he gave me a course that I had not taken, and that whole semester I was one page ahead of the students. It was, it was very difficult.
That's interesting. You taught computer science back in the early 80s. Can you just give me an idea of what you taught then? That's before I had any involvement with computers. I didn't even, early 80s. Yeah, when did I start? About 87. And mainly with word processors.
Right. They were just coming out. When I actually got employed after I finished at Chico, I taught in a community college, and really I was not teaching much programming or anything technical. I was showing people how to use their home computer. In those days, it was new for everybody.
There were home computers in 82?
No. Well, you're right. Maybe 1990.
Yeah. So what are you doing these days?
I am 20 years retired. Judith wanted us to move to the town of Vina in the Sacramento Valley. There's a Trappist monastery here, and she wanted us to be near it. So we've been here about 5 years, and that's the focus of our lives. We go over there morning and evening every day. I'm just back from Vespers. I had, in fact, that's why I was walking from the kitchen when you called. I just made it home. When we first moved here, we thought we would go up to the mountains in the summer. It's really hot here in the Sacramento Valley. In the time, I just stay indoors. Judith goes to the Sacramento River every day and gets in the cold water, but I don't do that. It's too much trouble.
Good for her. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, we thought we would go up to the mountains, and we found we love the monastery, and we just stay here all year round. Summer for me is like winter. I stay indoors and I go outside when I have to. It's actually easier than winter because old people like to be warm.
Well, I don't have that problem.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'll feel like it's nice and cool, and I'll look at the thermometer outside. I think it must be wrong, but it'll say it's in the 80s. Well, are you a docent at the monastery? Or what?
I am a volunteer docent. It's their fancy name for a tour guide.
Yeah.
So just coming up this next Saturday is their most popular event of the year, the Blessing of the Grapes. There will be 1,000 or 2,000 people coming, and we'll be doing nonstop church tours. We'll take them in for about 10 minutes and then bring the next group in. So.
Wow. And what's the name of the monastery?
The official name is the Abbey of Our Lady of New Clairvaux, Clairvaux. It's usually just called the Abbey of New Clairvaux.
Mm-hmm.
When they opened in 1955, they were going to call it Our Lady of Clairvaux, and Cistercian, that's Trappist headquarters in Europe, said, no, it has to be New Clairvaux, so that's the name.
Oh, because there's Clairvaux in
France.
In France, yeah.
I'm not sure.
Sort of like Camaldoli,
right?
Isn't that
right.
New Camaldoli?
Yes.
Yeah, I stayed at New Camaldoli one night with my wife at the time. Actually, we weren't married yet. Diane Goldschlag, and I think they told me that it was the first time a woman had stayed there. It was actually against the rules.
Is that the place at Big Sur up on the hill?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Judith has been there more than once. I've never been there. I hear it's beautiful.
Yeah, and it has a relationship with Tassara and with the Esalen Indians. There's some sort of group. There might be another, maybe Esalen Institute, where they meet once or twice a year, and it's gone through a lot of changes, and I can remember them coming to Tassara when we first, like two of them, when we first opened, and then when I was director, two of them came. The one was called Father Prior. That just meant he was the prior for some period that rotated, I think. And
right.
That was really good. Met with students and talked about, their practice, our practice, and we had so much in common. It was really neat.
Great.
Now, who is Our Lady of Clairvaux?
It would be the Blessed Virgin Mary. She has many titles. So Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Fatima. It refers to her being associated with a place. I don't think it necessarily means she appeared there, but they had a devotion to her. So
yeah,
it's kind of honorary.
Mm-hmm. And how do you see that? What does that mean, devotion to Mary?
I am learning what devotion to Mary means. I was baptized in 1970, so I've been learning about Christianity for 50 years. And I've never been very comfortable with devotion to Mary. She is our mother. And my mother died when I was 6 years old. And I don't really have a feeling for what it's like to have a mother. But recently I have been praying the Rosary, which is centuries old and which is surprising number of people pray. I know Pope John Paul II prayed a daily rosary, and which surprised me. You'd think he'd have more important things to do, but it's quite grounding. It's not very intellectual. It's very repetitive.
Yeah.
you use the beads so you don't have to count. And I take a walk every day and pray a rosary, and it helps. And then I went on a 5-day silent retreat with Judith and several other friends of ours last fall. And we were actually studying the Trinity. We weren't studying Mary, but Mary was the one who recommended 5 days. She told somebody that 3 days was not enough, you need 5. So in that way, I've been doing what she says. Edward, my brother, just sits in her presence. I don't know if he's told you, he likes to go to a Marian shrine where there will be a statue there, and there's a great peace. And I sent him recently. I wrote him the words to the Hail Mary prayer, and he said, "Well, thank you, but I just like to sit quietly."
Yeah.
I don't have that feeling of being surrounded by love, but I have a feeling of her concern for me and her help. So I have a little statue of Mary in my room. It's actually about 2.5 feet tall. I wish I could show you.
Well, you can, so to speak. You've got a page, youngcute.com, and you can send me a picture. I'll put it there, and I can mention a few words you just said,
Okay. So that's devotion to Mary. It means spending some time with her one way or another. For me, it's a daily priority. It's something I do each day. And then also I do my physical therapy exercises, which aren't religious at all, but they keep me from getting stiff and sore. So.
Oh, yeah. No, that's very, very important. What do you do?
It's a set that a very gifted massage therapist taught me. He used to live near here, and he's moved to Hawaii, and I miss him. But I do the exercises. He was certified in 18 different kinds of massage, but the one he actually did didn't have any certification. His teacher had learned it from a blind man in Hong Kong in 1800. So,
wow. Wow.
It helped me a lot. So.
Well, you've had a very interesting spiritual path.
Thank you.
And and admirable. And where do you see it starting?
My spiritual path?
Yeah.
With my father. He and my mother took Edward and me to church. It was, they were very clear that it was not exactly Christian. It was the Unitarian Church in San Francisco. It's a historic building. It's still there. It's at Franklin and Geary Streets.
Oh, yeah.
They renovated it, so it's now earthquake safe and restored. But Unitarian means it's not Trinitarian. The Trinity is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, God in 3 persons, which is a great puzzle, basically. But the Unitarians don't believe Jesus is God. So They had a church service that sort of copied Protestant services. They had a pipe organ. They had stained glass windows. They read from the Bible, at least in those days in the 1940s. And that was my beginning of exposure to religion. We even had comparative religion in sixth grade. They took us to different churches, to a Jewish synagogue, to what they call the Holy Roller Church, to a Catholic church.
Oh, Holy Roller, far out. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. They didn't take us to ordinary Protestant churches. Probably it wouldn't be different enough. And I think we visited something in Chinatown. I don't remember.
In what? In Chinatown. Chinatown.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Frank, your father's name was Frank, right?
Yes.
I remember him. And I remember his second wife, Anne.
Yes, correct.
Right.
And I call her my adoptive mother. She did not want to be a stepmother, so she adopted me and Edward.
And well, you know, the Edward's his tale that he tells, that he's been telling ever since I knew him, begins with the death of your mother.
Right.
And the trauma he experienced when Frank, just couldn't take care of you all and put you in an orphanage. And
correct.
And then another devastating trauma when you were separated.
Yes.
But so, right?
Yeah, he was in the nursery and I was in the younger boy's house, and we weren't allowed to see each other. It was very hard in that way.
So, how was all that for you?
It was a different kind of trauma. Father, and I'm sort of hesitating. How do I tell this? Just sort of briefly. Father left me in the care of a man he didn't really know. I think it was someone from work. He wanted to talk with an older woman who was a kind of therapist. She became, what would be the word, concerned when I touched a beautiful Chinese vase in her house, and I was not allowed to stay there. Father left me in the care of this man who had a friend who molested me, and then they had to make up a story to tell Father to discredit. I didn't know the vocabulary. I didn't know molest or any of those words. And so they told him I had taken my clothes off and paraded naked in front of them. And my father, I think, must have come from a cultural background where he trusted adults and not children. He did not ask me for my side of the story. And we were driving away, and he was in this agony of humiliation. And he said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Do what?" And he told me, and I said I didn't. And he was so angry that I had done it and denied it, that he did this karate chop from the driver's side of the car to me, and he got me in the side of the head. and it crippled me. It also caused the whole incident to become what's called a hidden memory. If you asked me for the next 40 years, if you asked me had I been molested, I would have said in all honesty, I have no memory of it. And I was crippled because my body pulled away from where I'd been hurt, and the muscles got blocked in that tension. So my spine was curved sideways. A chiropractor many years later showed me an X-ray. The memory came back after Father had died. After a year after Frank had died, I read a box of my mother's letters that she had written to her sister, my aunt. My cousin gave them to me. And one evening I started reading them. It took me 2 days. And they had mostly things that women would be concerned about, but they referred to people and places and events that I actually remembered, and the memory came back. I thought, why did I not tell my father? And that memory came back 5 years later. I was lying down, and I had been going to this chiropractor who would find a knot in the muscles on my back or my belly. He'd press on it until it released. That went on for some months. And he got me out of the of being bound up. I'm not sure what the correct terminology is. Mm-hmm. But then the memory came back. I was rubbing the side of my face, and the memory came back that my father had hit me. It was terrifying. I felt fear flow through my whole body, and I had to reason with myself. I said, my father will not hit me again because he is far away and because he is dead. And I felt relief flow through my whole body. And I thought at that time, how will I ever understand this? Well, I do understand it now. That's almost 30 years ago. For 10 years, I couldn't talk about it without choking up. And I'm telling you about it. I don't know how it comes across, but I'm telling you sort of matter-of-factly.
Yeah, it comes across very clear, really.
Yeah, well, that was my trauma. So a hidden memory, and also a fascination with male sexuality that I didn't understand correctly, which really I've been helped by the Christianity, because I do pray to Mary for help, and to Jesus for help with my feelings and with my past. And it's I would say it's healed, and some of the oppression is gone, and the compulsion is gone. So actually, it's technically it's deliverance. There were some spirits that attached themselves to me that I've been freed from. So.
That you've been what?
Freed from.
Oh, yeah. Wow. And how do you know that? How did you perceive that and experience that?
The compulsion was gone. Compulsive thoughts and compulsive behaviors.
I see. Now, this experience that you had, that you just described, is this before are going to the orphanage or after or what?
I think it was on the way. When I got there, I went into the infirmary. That was the policy. I don't know if they did it with Edward. He was very young. They made an exception to take someone so young. But the normal policy was you were in the infirmary for 3 days to be sure you weren't sick before they put you in the house with the other boys. And I had to have a normal temperature 3 days in a row. I was there 3 weeks, and they just gave up. My temperature would go up to 99, for heaven's sake. And they gave up and said, oh, well, they let me go into the house with the other boys. But when I first got there, I was crying, what would be the word, just uncontrollably. And the nurse, who was an older woman, very capable and I think kind, she tried to comfort me. She thought I was crying because my mother had died. And then I started crying again. And she came in and she said, "You stop that." And I stopped. And that's, I think, why the memory became hidden. I was never able to process it. And a 6-year-old can't process something like that. I'd lost my mother, and my father had betrayed me. And it's a very strange thing to realize that for the rest of his life, I was terrified of him. And didn't know it, but there were some indications that there was a distance. In 1991, I was standing on the corner of Bush and Octavia Streets. It's a block up from where I lived at Bush and Laguna. Down the block was where Sokoji used to be. In 1991, it had been torn down. And then it was rebuilt. It's now Kokoro, a Japanese old folks' home. They got the property from the city for $1 from the redevelopment agency, and they had to rebuild it with the facade as it was. Inside, it's not as it was at all. Anyway, so in 1991, and then half a block up Bush Street was where it was the back entrance to the office of the Red Cross, where my father worked for 20 years. And I realized with a shock that I had lived at Bush and Laguna from 1965 till 68. And my father had come to work a block and a half away, and I saw him 4 times a year. I used to go visit their home in San Rafael, and that shocked me. And then, of course, that was 1991. In 94 was when the memory came back, and I understood what the what's the word, alienation was, that I hadn't understood.
When did he die?
He died in February of 1988. Judith and 2 of our sons and I were in China. I taught English in Southwest China for that year. So Anne was so broken up when Frank died that she didn't even write to me for 10 days, and then the letter took 10 days. So 3 weeks later, I got a letter saying that my father had died. I went to the office of the college, and I asked for a day off. I knew that in communist China, you could take 1 day to mourn, and then it was back to work. So they gave me a day off from teaching, and what actually happened was my students came in groups to call on me. So in reality, we had English practice all day long. But I was touched. I thought that was kind of them. And I read The Office for the Dead in the prayer book we were using. And it calmed me. It took away the grief. There's always some kind of grief. Now, some years later, I was where we used to live up near Lake Almanor. I went to a one half day parish retreat that a friend of ours was leading. Her name is Janice Carlton, and she read from her book. She read from other books. She told stories, and then she wanted us to close our eyes. That we were at a beach, and there were two sort of lawn chairs or beach chairs there. One was for Jesus and one was for me. And I thought, I hate this kind of thing. It's manipulative. But I closed my eyes, and for some reason, my beach was at nighttime. I don't know what that means. But Jesus spoke to me immediately, and he said, I will take care of your father. And that amazed me. I did not know I was worried about my father. I knew he had died. Some people get wondering whether their loved one is in heaven or in hell. That's never been my experience. I have never worried. I trust God and His love. And so anyway, that was reassuring to me. I didn't even know I was worried about my father, and Jesus reassured me, it's all right. I will take care of him. So I know some things about my father's childhood and his youth. He had his own trauma growing up. And I think one day we'll be able to be friends.
So you and Ed went back to living with your father, Frank. I guess after he got together after he married Anne, right?
I went home several months before Edward. I went to a house down the block where she did daycare. I went there for lunch. But I was on my own for part of the day, and Edward was, I guess, too young for that. And I'm not sure exactly. It was around the time that Anne and Frank got married. Yes.
How long were you in the orphanage?
3 years. And it was called Sunny Hills in San Anselmo. It had formerly been the San Francisco Presbyterian Orphanage and Farm. At the time we were there in the late 40s, the custom was to put children in foster homes. And Frank didn't know that Sunny Hills was for children who were too troubled to go into foster homes.
Oh.
So I was in a house with tough kids. And it was a very sudden, what do you call it, immersion or something. Francis and Frank, my mother and father, raised us, they were deliberately permissive. Frank had the theory that I would blossom if I were free to do what popped into my head, basically. And so suddenly at Sunny Hills, there were rules and expectations. consequences, it was very sudden.
Hmm.
And I think looking back on it recently, I realized God knows what he's doing. I asked him in 2016, I confronted him. I said, why did you chastise me so severely? The death of my mother, being crippled, being estranged, and so on. And I said, why did you do that? And he answered me immediately. He said, you are like a bonsai tree. He knew that I liked Japanese things, and I understood immediately what he meant. I was a work of art that he'd spent a lot of time on. And I was misshapen, as bonsai trees are, but a work of art and something beautiful. And it was very comforting to me. But more recently, I realized I needed a correction to that permissive upbringing. I would have been a self-centered disaster if I had grown up just doing what I wanted. I think so. God, the Bible says he chastises every son whom he receives, and what father is there who does not discipline his son? So that's where I am with God the Father. When Judy and I went to the 5-day silent retreat and studied the Holy Trinity, we each made a consecration to the Holy Trinity, which basically meant we're going to take God seriously and pay attention and try to behave appropriately, that kind of thing. And when I made my consecration, I got really choked up in the line about God's love for me. So I know God loves me, but he's not sentimental. He's serious.
So you got back with Frank and Anne when you were 9, and how old? How much younger was Ed?
4 years.
So he was like 5 when he got back.
Yes.
So how did your life progress from there? I mean, between there, so I'm interested in what brought you to live near Sokoji, and what was the trajectory? How was your life then in that period?
I was lonely and unhappy. Once I found a diary I had kept in one of those years, and there were 2 pages that were interesting, and every other page said, I should have done this, I should have done that. I just burned it. I know this.
What? Oh.
So we in high school, I realized also quite recently that I got affirmation in those years from teachers. When Father came to take me to Sunny Hills, he came to my 2nd grade class, and the teacher stepped out into the hall and kissed me, and to say goodbye. And she said, "My star pupil," and that's still there. That kiss on my forehead is still there. And when I went to college in 1959, I went to Reed College.
Right.
Yeah, well, I was there less than a year. I dropped out. But I had an instructor who mocked me at every class and ridiculed me. And I didn't understand at the time that I couldn't handle that. And I dropped out to find the meaning of life. And it was the next year I went to San Francisco State, which was it felt like prison, but it was during that time that I saw a wind bell at a friend's house, and I moved to the city in 1964 to be near Zen Center, and I started sitting morning and evening, and I never joined. I never became a Buddhist officially, but I was there for several years doing the meditation. And my understanding of it for many years was that the exposure to Japanese tradition prepared me to approach Christianity, because I saw that in an old religious tradition, there's a message that is being transmitted that is the living, breathing message. And so I approached Christianity later, looking for what it was. That the tradition was meant to pass on. I turned to Christianity, of course, because I couldn't sit a sesshin. I began to tremble, and I gave up. I thought I have to leave. That's when I knew you. You encouraged me to stay, as I recall. But anyway,
I was just, I'd only been, I'd been in Zen Center about a year, and I still was sort of like an overly enthusiastic new student.
Well, I was a worn-out 3 or 4 year student. Anyway, Judith and I were living together.
When did you meet Judith, and how did that come about?
May 7th, 1967. Several of the Zen students went on a picnic at China Beach. And I started talking with her, and we just fell for each other. I used to say it was like glue. I couldn't leave her if I wanted to. And we're still together. It's not the way you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to have a proper courtship, and you're supposed to have some discernment of, is this a good idea? It's not a good idea. We had difficulties for several years, but neither of us left. That's looking back. That's the amazing thing. Neither of us left.
56 years ago.
Yeah, and we've been married 53.
Wow.
So.
And who married you?
Katagiri Roshi.
Oh, is that right?
We had a Buddhist wedding. January 3rd, 1969. Suzuki Roshi was supposed to marry us, and he was ill. He was either ill or said he was ill.
He was ill. I remember. That was a hard winter for him. 69. Yeah. He did.
Okay.
That was very hard winter for him. But go on.
That's good to know. Judith felt gypped. She wasn't sure we were really married because the wrong priest had done it, and it took her a long time to decide we actually were. When we became Christian, we weren't sure what to do with our Buddhist wedding. When we became Catholic, we learned we didn't have to do anything. The rule in the Catholic Church, and we entered in 1989, the rule in the Catholic Church is if you're already married and you both become Catholic, you have a Catholic marriage. You don't have to do anything to fix it up. And so we have a valid sacramental Catholic marriage. Just by taking that step of entering. But we celebrated our 25th anniversary in, when was that? I have to do arithmetic in my head, 1789, 94. We were Catholic, and I asked the priest, I said, normally people renew their wedding vows, and we can't renew them. We never took any. And he said, I have a prayer that fixes everything. And I thought, lots of people would love a prayer that fixes everything. I think what he actually read was the prayers in the Missal for a 50th anniversary, because when we had our 50th anniversary, Father Avram, our son, said Mass for us here at the monastery.
Wait a minute. What did you just say? Who did it?
One of our sons is a Catholic priest.
Oh. I know. I know just what he looks like. I can see him right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And we went over to the monastery church at the hour when it's open to the public for sightseeing. So we weren't interfering with the monks' prayer schedule. And he said a wedding anniversary Mass for us. And when he read the prayer for 50th anniversary, I bet this is what the priest 25 years ago read, because it sounded pretty familiar.
It's really interesting. Now, when I remember you know, from the Zen Center. Now, I remember like in 67, not long after that, I don't know exactly how long, you got involved with the Episcopalian Church, right?
That is right.
And
a friend.
Tell us about that.
Well, a friend of Judith's sister, whom she had known since her youth. The friend invited us to an Episcopal church for the Easter Vigil. It's the night before Easter, and it was St. John's Episcopal Church on 16th Street, just south of Market. And it was very impressive. The choir, they had a gifted choir director at the time who attracted a following, so the choir was bigger than the congregation. We processed around the outside of the church singing, and it was glorious. And then at the time for communion, we stayed in our pews. You're not supposed to go present yourself for communion if you're not even a Christian. And the priest just came to us and gave us communion where we were. He held up the consecrated bread. He said, the body of Christ. And I had a quick decision to make. I could follow the rule and refuse Christ, or I could break the rule and take Christ. So I took it. And that was our beginning. And I enrolled at the Graduate Theological Union in 1969. My father had taught me that the Unitarians make their own creed. He said each man makes his own creed. It was many years before inclusive language. So he didn't know that one day you couldn't say it that way. But I thought I was supposed I thought I was supposed to figure out what I believed. That's actually not what a creed is. A creed is something that was figured out centuries ago, and you decide whether you agree with it or not. But anyway, I went to the Graduate Theological Union to learn about Christianity, to see if I believed it, to see if I wanted to become a Christian. Well, that's really the hard way. No, nobody does it that way. But in the spring of 1970, in second semester Greek, we were reading the Gospel of Mark in the original Greek, and I fell in love with Jesus when we read about the stilling of the storm. He's in the boat with his disciples. They're out on the Sea of Galilee. There's wind and waves and water sloshing into the boat, and they wake him up. And he rebukes the wind, and he rebukes the sea, and is completely calm. And the disciples are terrified. They're not terrified by the wind and the sea. They're terrified by him making it calm. And I fell in love with this man across the language barrier and across the centuries. I decided I'll just go ahead and be baptized, and I'll figure it out later. And so I was baptized at Easter, actually the night before Easter in 1970. I forget the date. And then I did gradually realize things. I realized, my behavior needs to change. And I made it a practice to read morning and evening prayer, where you read some of the Psalms twice a day. And I thought the Psalms are 3,000 years old. They've been prayed for 3,000 years. And if I read them, they will inform me. I will start to understand where they are coming from. Mm-hmm. I've been reading the Psalms now, since about 1972. So, however many years that is, and that's the monastery practice. The monks are in church 7 times a day, and they're always singing psalms at each of those times. Judith and I join them twice a day, morning and evening. So their motto is in Latin, ora et labora, which means prayer and work. But much of their prayer is the Psalms. They also do private reading. They read scripture with the idea of listening for what God says to them personally. There's two ways to understand the Bible. One is what it historically means, and it's sort of public and shared meaning. And then there's a private and personal meaning where God can quicken a word to you with some personal message. I've had the personal messages that I've told you. I don't usually read the Bible in that way. I do read the Psalms all the time. So.
And Did you become an Episcopalian priest?
I did.
Yeah.
I was a very good student. My professors told me I should become a priest. One of them took me by the arm, and I can still feel where he was pinching my elbow. And he said, the faculty think you should be ordained. It was not actually a good idea, because doing well in seminary is not the same thing as doing well as a parish priest. What actually happened was I applied late. My classmates had all applied for ordination before they went to seminary. I applied after, and it meant that I couldn't be ordained for 2 years after I finished seminary. And what it caused was it looked like there was something wrong with me, or some problem. And I did get a parish. So when we entered the Catholic Church, I was a priest for 14 years, from 1975 till 1989. And when we entered the Catholic Church, I lost the priesthood, but there wasn't much left of it to lose. So that actually made the decision easier.
How so? Was there not much to lose?
I wasn't working as a priest. I was not a parish priest.
Oh.
I was attending church on Sundays and functioning as a priest sometimes.
I see. So it was a transition.
It was.
Yeah.
When one of the monks dies, they call the funeral service the transitus of a monk. So yes, it was a transition.
Now, so how was your relationship with Shunryu Suzuki?
I certainly respected him. I was not close to him. I think I was uneasy with when we had Dokusan, the personal visit. I didn't really know what to do or what to expect. He was comfortable with me. As Edward says in one of his books, you felt he was looking right through you and was not disturbed.
Well, that's very well said. That's very well said. Yeah, people have problems with themselves, and he was not disturbed. That's well said.
Yeah. So when I told him I had to leave Tassajara in 1967, he embraced me. He said, he told me, just take it easy, stay, don't worry. And he said, I need you. Later, many years later, I found out he said that to Edward, and I was not sure at the time what that meant, but I did decide I wasn't going to be able to stay, and I wasn't going to be able to do it. And it was, looking back on it, it was God's direction to point me in a different place or a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's taken all these years to become a Christian.
How was what was your feeling about the the group, people there. Of course, your main experience, your experience with Zen Center was almost entirely before Tassajara, when things started getting more communal, you know.
That's right.
So a lot of people didn't have much relationship with others, but some did, and there were some sort of cliques, I'd say. Did you experience that?
I worked for Silas Hoadley in his warehouse. He used to import hand-blown apothecary jars, I think from Okinawa. The people found the discarded blue and brown and green glass bottles and melted them and made handmade jars. So I was comfortable with Silas. I worked for him. I lived, and then I was comfortable with Edward.
Uh-huh.
And no, I wasn't particularly part of the community. I think that's true.
Now, Ed came. You know, Ed told me he's going back to Ed, away from Edward.
Oh.
I loved it when he said, when he decided to use the full name Edward, he said, because he decided to go more Edward, like forward Edward. I thought that was neat. But,
okay.
And he said so many people are used to calling him Ed, and he had some reason, but either one. Ed and Alan Winter came to Sokoji, came there because of you, because you had been sending them koans, or stories, maybe from Zen Flesh and Bones, I don't know what.
Right.
And they came in 60. Did they come in 64 or 65? 65, I think.
I think 65.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. It seems to me we have a pretty complete picture of your path here. What am I missing? What are we missing? Is there anything you'd like to add?
There should be. Actually, all of the, what would you call it? All of the, I was thinking, I spent the whole day today not thinking about what I was going to say. But one thing I thought to say was that I did not have a sudden conversion experience. I had several revelations. I fell in love with Jesus. God spoke to me a couple of times. But I think I've told them all to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything to add. It'll come to me later.
You sent me the book because you've been in China. Christ the Living Tao, is that the name of it?
I think so.
I think when I was working on Crooked Cucumber, I read a book on, was it Saint Antonio or Anthony? Saint Anthony. Is that his name? Is he the one who was such a great teacher and so understanding, was said to have the gift of consolation?
Anthony was a follower of St. Francis. Anthony of Padua. I think he's actually from Spain, but yes, he was a teacher. Yeah.
I really appreciate it. And I had to get that from the Baptist Press. Well, tell me something. Why are, I I come from Texas, and in my home, I didn't experience a lot of prejudice at all. I mean, there's built-in prejudice just coming from there, but I didn't, I would just very slight things. I could look back later and go, oh yeah, that was anti-Semitic, and I guess you could call it, or a sort of prejudice, and anti-Catholic, and of course prejudice against blacks, but my home was, and also my friends in high school, there was very, very little of any of that. But I would hear it from elements of society that I considered to be more crude. But I didn't hear it a lot, but I learned it was there. And I never understood the anti-Catholic thing. I mean, the Protestant church just refutes the idea of the Trinity? Is that what it's about? Or is it about the history of the Catholic Church and what? I mean,
it varies. There's many Protestant denominations. That's their main characteristic is if there's a problem in the church, half the people leave and start a new church. So anyway, some of them are pretty good about being friends with Catholics. Some of them are very dismissive. And it comes from Martin Luther, John Calvin, for the Protestant Reformation of the 1500s. When also the Church of England separated from the Catholic Church. And the idea was that the Catholic Church had corrupted and distorted true Christianity, and the Protestant reformers were restoring it. An extreme version of that I ran into some years ago. The idea was that the early church had been eclipsed by the Catholic Church and reemerged in the Protestant Reformation. So there were 1,000 years of darkness. Anyway, there are some people who have that kind of idea, and they think Catholics are not Christian.
Yeah. I know.
So
I know. It's so weird.
Catholics do regard themselves as Christian. The Protestants, some of them are more aware of theology than others, but the Protestants basically accept the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They believe Jesus is Jesus is God Himself. He's also there's also the Father, who does not have a human body. There's also the Holy Spirit, who talks to us without needing a body. But it was the Unitarians that I was raised in that specifically wanted it understood they did not accept the Trinity. So.
Suzuki did. He said the Trinity comes up in it's sort of like he was saying. I don't remember what word. Sort of like he was saying in the perennial philosophy and the great fundamental wisdom. The Trinity keeps coming up over and over.
Wow, that's amazing. I don't remember that, but that's good to know.
And my experience, I was raised in a sort of mind only, mind is God home, right? New Thought Christianity. So, my father didn't appreciate any the Catholic Church or the Protestant churches. He was a reader in the Christian Science Church and then moved on to other less organized, more I don't know. I just call it mind only. I don't know what to say. But when I felt very comfortable, and I liked Emerson and Thoreau, and they were so they were Christians who were influenced by Buddhism and Hinduism, and like when I started getting involved with Zen Center, it seemed like maybe the Quakers were closer. But as I got more and more experience, it always turned out to be the Catholic contemplatives that I felt most comfortable with, and that well, if you look at like Thomas Merton and Brother David Steindl-Rast, and anyway, I just wanted to tell you that's my experience. Is that contemplative Catholicism has more, and Edward Kanze, the great Buddhist scholar, the Prajnaparamita, he said Mahayana Buddhism and Roman Catholicism are the two great universal religions. He said they both have a woman at the top, and they're not constrained. They don't have cultural restraints. They can move into any culture.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
There's a monk at the monastery here. He's a retired abbot. He's 80-something or close to 90 years old. But Thomas Merton was his teacher.
Oh, goodness.
So he, when the monks here came from Gethsemane Abbey in Kentucky in 1955, the abbot sent them, and this man whom I'm talking about, his name is Thomas Davis. He didn't want to come to California, and he asked Thomas Merton if Merton could prevail on the abbot not to send him. But Merton told Thomas Davis, "Why don't you go just for the fun of it?" So he realized he was going to be no help. So
that's good. That's good. Yeah. Well, Dwight, I guess we've come full circle, and I've really appreciated talking with you. It's I just want to say one other thing. Where I was living in San Rafael, there was that Eastern Orthodox church right on Crane Canyon Road, right near where it comes into, I don't know what that is, Santa Rosa Avenue or something down there. And I used to go down there and talk to the priest. And I think that was about the time I was talking to you. He was really into pseudo-Dionysus, but they were doing beautiful art. I don't know what do you call it? Frescoes or something? In that church. Really beautiful.
Well, it is a fresco, but it's iconography.
Yeah.
My wife Judith doesn't paint churches, but she does paint icons.
Anyway, it's been really good talking with you.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see you around Christmas time.
Great. I always say, if I'm still alive, actually I'm in good health, but I'm at the stage of life where I can't take things for granted.
Right. Well, what are you about 83? Huh?
82. 82 in a couple weeks.
82. Yeah. Well, that's a good age.
Yep.
I find, I'm 78. So far, it just gets better and better. And
that is good.
That's, that can change any minute. I have a cold right now, and it's very unusual for me to have a cold. But I don't really feel bad. I'm just a little weak. I'm not doing yoga or walking much, just a little bit. But I can work. I can sit and get up and walk around a little bit.
It's. I don't hear it in your voice. Right.
Well, okay. Well, you give my love to Judith. And look, I haven't been back to America in 10 years, but if I get if I get back, I'd love to visit your monastery there. It's got it looks like it's got a pretty vibrant practice going on. Yeah, and that's really cool. I'm very impressed that you and Judith both have a relationship with it. That's good. Well, that's what makes us be able to say we're enjoying life now, really. Suzuki Roshi said, the reason we practice is so we can enjoy our old age. Of course, he'd say other things, give other reasons. But that does seem to have come into play.
I went over to the winery this afternoon and bought. I don't know if I should explain it. The monastery started growing grapes 20 years ago, and they make wine. Anyway, the manager of the winery told the clerk who was helping me to give me an employee discount. She said he's an employee, and I told her later, I said, I'm not an employee, I'm a volunteer. And she said, well, she said to give you a discount, it's your lucky day. So
that's great. That's great.
So it's a nice feeling to be associated with that community.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you take care, and I'm very glad we've known each other 56 years.
Wow, that's right. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, well, thank you for talking to me. I think it's really good. It's unique. I mean, tell you, it's really a unique conversation. It's great. Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So, thanks a lot, Dwight Clark. Appreciate it. It was really good talking with you. And indeed, a unique path. Maybe I made a note in my calendar in mid-December to get a date with you to do a Christmas podcast talk, or maybe do part of one. Might talk to him and Father Steve Frost, who I've done a podcast with. Just a thought there, huh? We'll see. So, until next time, this is DC. Pubov, Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggett Bandita and dear lovely Katrinka, and we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.